In my attempts to make Tier 0 Ruby Amethyst pretty much invincible, we went ahead and we updated the deck list to what you see on screen here. The original video is linked in the description, so make sure you check that out. And basically what we tried to do was gear this deck list a little bit more towards dealing with aggro by putting in some anti-aggro cards so that we had better chances in the early game of shutting down those strategies. And in that video linked in the description, you will see us go up against Amber Amethyst and Emerald Amethyst, probably the two most common aggro strategies, going second and still winning those matches. However, what I wanted to do in this video was take a look at how does this deck fare against the three other most common decks in the format. We're going to take a look at Steel Song first, then Steel Amethyst, and then round it out with the mirror match. So check the timestamps for those of you interested, and the deck list is also linked in the description as well as pinned in the comments. Let's get into these matches and see how this version of the deck performs. Before I jump into the match analysis here, I just want to make a quick note that if you could drop a like on this video if you enjoy this content, that would be greatly appreciated to show me that the work that I put into these videos, editing out the wait time, speeding them up, and doing commentary over them to save you guys the time so you can just see kind of the important parts, is actually worth it, instead of just doing a live commentary where it's much easier to post because I can just record it as I play, but these ones take a lot more work. Anyways, in this first matchup, we are going up against Steel Song, and we have a really good start after grabbing 3 friends on the other side and ending up inking one of them and just hard casting another. But the Minnie Mouse on turn 1 into Teeth and Ambitions turn 2 to take out the opponent's Cinderella puts us in an amazing position here. You can just see how much weaker this matchup is now for Steel Song compared to set 1, where you were very much on a slow roll. This is what Ruby Amethyst needed at Teeth and Ambitions in order to deal with Steel Song. Even though they don't play the Lilo package anymore, you can just see that their board state is now severely crippled because they don't have that Cinderella to sing some of those songs that they need. What's interesting here is after dropping this aerial and taking that grab your swords, they actually miss an ink drop here, and you're going to see why in just a second. But we have a pretty healthy hand. We can easily deal with this opponent's board. We have another Merlin Crab, but we don't even need to use it because Mim Snake will just take out that Simba, and we have so much advantage over the opponent still, especially for the fact that they missed an ink drop. We're just golden. The opponent does ink though at the earliest opportunity, and then they whole new world, singing it with aerial, and you know, we lose a lot of good cards there. As you can see, us checking our discard pile, and we take a look at the opponents, and they discard all uninkables. And this happens with Steel Song because a lot of the good Steel Songs are uninkable. And so if you're sitting with 2 whole new worlds, it's a good card, but when you have 2 of them in your hand, it feels really bad, right? So the opponent ends up wiping out our board, but they are down to 5 cards, and we're on an 8 cards total. And we can easily just, again, get the advantage off of the Maleficent and Mim Fox. This is why this combination is so, I don't want to say broken, but it's very, very powerful, right? I mean, I drew off of the Maleficent, and then I just bounced it back to hand with the Mim Fox, and then Mim Fox took out a threat. And the Mim Fox acts as the Maui, where it goes 2 for 1 here. The opponent, once again, activates a whole new world, hard casting it, because this is how desperate they are, in order to try to claw back any advantage, because they know that we just generated a bunch of advantage off of that one play of the Maleficent into the Mim Fox. However, the opponent can't really do anything else other than just pass with the queen on board, and so we go ahead and establish a board here, and now the opponent is finally going to be able to try to deal with our board, but we have tempo, and you're going to see this pretty slick play with one of the new additions to the deck in the Pinocchio. We're going to use it to tap down the queen, and that isolates the Tinkerbell as the only on-card field. And then we're going to Lady Tremaine it away after getting up to 8 ink by inking our 1-drop. And just like that, we've outed the entire opponent's field. They have probably no board wipes left because they've used 2 grab your swords or discarded 2. We top deck a Lady Tremaine. We didn't even need to do that because we had a Mim Fox to bounce our 1 on field back to hand to recast it to take care of that Cinderella. But I'll take the top deck anyways. We're going to go ahead and ink the Minnie Mouse to keep up on ink and drop the Surfer in order to put a lot of lore pressure on the opponent at this point, because they don't really have board wipes. As I say that, they grab your swords, but that's not really a full board wipe, right? It takes out 3 of our characters, which have all done their job at this point, and now we just have 6 lore pressure on board here. We're going to go ahead and ink that Maui and use the Fox in order to bounce back 1 Tremaine, and then use it to also recast the Mini just in case the opponent has let the storm rage on, or somehow another grab your swords. But yeah, there's really nothing that they can do here. On 6 ink left, yeah, they can't really do anything. So you can see just how dominant this deck was. They couldn't really get anything going. Anything they tried to get going, we just dominated, and then, you know, they couldn't even get any lore. We just continued to play no matter what the opponent tried to do, and the whole New Worlds didn't end up making a difference in the end. In this next matchup here, we're going up against Steel Amethyst, and this one is, I believe, more oriented towards the Floodborn control. So I kind of posted a video on this, but the opponent is playing a slightly different build. Anyways, we're going to start off with the 1-drop Mini Mouse, and again, playing those 8 1-drops, make sure that we see one of them usually at the start of the game. And having the turn 2 Fox, look at this, like a 3/3 body on board on turn 2 is just absolutely insane. Like, there's almost nothing that can contest this, really. They're going to play a blue fairy, though, on turn 2. And unfortunately for them, we have an evasive mini, which means that their blue fairy can't quest, otherwise it'll get taken out by our evasive mini. So they just pass on Arthur, which is still half decent. But at this point, I need to make the decision: do I want to use the Mim Snake to take out the Arthur, or do I want to use the Surfer to take out the blue fairy after I drop this Pinocchio? And to be honest, the Arthur was probably the correct play, but I figured, like, they're going to quest with Arthur anyways, and I don't really care about them getting the lore here, since I have a tempo and advantage. But I guess they technically could have generated more advantage if they ended up playing like a rabbit or something and then bouncing it back to hand with the Arthur. So in hindsight, I think Arthur was the correct play, because if I was worried about draw off of the blue fairy, I mean, they would just draw 2 off Arthur anyways, right? If they had a Merlin. So I should have done that decision instead. It ends up working out as they Storm Rage on my Stylish Surfer and then protect their Arthur by bouncing it back to hand with the Fox. We're just going to go ahead and quest with our own Fox and pass. The opponent replays Arthur and passes turn. We did play a Merlin, so we got a Merlin on board, which is nice. I'm going to go ahead and play my other Fox in order to bounce back the Pinocchio, and then cast the Pinocchio to tap down the Arthur to make sure the opponent does not get any value off of cycling their cards. And I probably should not have also quested with the Rabbit, because while I would draw a card if it gets outed by the Fox, it just makes their Fox go 2 for 1. Well, I guess not really, since I draw off Rabbit, but you know, there's no reason to quest there and just give the opponent the free ability to take out the Rabbit. It didn't matter in the end anyways. Well, I guess it did, yeah, because they grab your swords, and in the end we just still have Maui, but the opponent is going to have another grab your sword to completely wipe out my board. And I draw off Rabbit at least, but the game state is kind of equal. However, as we continue on in this air quotes race of I guess ink, the Ruby package has way more gas than the Steel package. However, the opponent does end up establishing a spell book, and they do have a evasive Pascal, which we're going to be able to take out with Mini if we want, and they do have a Goat in rotation, which can generate them a ton of lore if it survives. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and quest with the other Mini, and then Yzma back our damaged Surfer after taking out that Pascal, just to draw more cards. And this is what I was talking about in my Decklist video, linked in the description, where I wanted to cut the Yzma, but I was just seeing way too much utility off of after this game gets to a simplified game state, which is exactly what you see here, like literally what I was saying last video. The Yzma draw 2 can actually come in super clutch, and you can see it here. It's 5 cards to 0 for my opponent, and I have a Be Prepared I could wipe the board with if I wanted to put them on nothing, but I don't even need to do that. I'm just going to drop an Olaf and pass, because if they quest, I'm going to be able to utilize the Crab in order to make my Olaf much beefier. So the opponent ends up taking out one of our cards and then using Goat to quest and Spellbook to gain an extra lore. We're going to go ahead and Crab the Olaf and then drop it into the Goat, and then just quest and just replay an Olaf, I guess. And we've got 2 Pinocchios on board and a Lady Tremaine, so like, what is the opponent really going to top deck that's threatening to us? Probably nothing. And again, you can just see that the match is pretty much over at this point. But I do make a weird play. I use, after questing, this is all correct, I bounce back the Crab, and I just should have used the Fox to take out the Yzma instead of the Olaf, because Olaf could have quested for 1, but in the end it doesn't matter, because we still have over 4 questing power on board, and unless the opponent top decks to Be Prepared, and even if they did, we have follow-up anyways, there's nothing the opponent can really do here, so they just end up scooping it up. Alright, this was a little bit more of an intense match. This is the mirror match, and we are going second, which is a huge detriment in this matchup, because whoever goes first and has the tempo can easily make up for the lost card. It's not even a problem. they're going to start with inking a Yzma and playing a Mini Mouse. We're going to ink a Maui and play a Mini Mouse. And they don't call it a mirror match for nothing. They're going to ink a Snake and play a Snake after questing with Mini. And if you haven't guessed it yet, we pretty much have the same play. The only difference is we're inking different things. So we ink our Goat and we also drop our Snake and pass. And again, you can see how the opponent has the advantage because they're on the play, so they're able to do things first, even though I'm just mirroring exactly what they do pretty much. Inking the Mini that we brought back just like them and playing a Maleficent just like them to draw a card. However, the opponent didn't quest with their Snake. I did. I guess they just wanted to make sure that they could do this with it next turn, which makes sense. They want to make sure they can preserve it for the bounce, and then they trade off their Fox into my Snake. So we know they got Snake in hand, which again, it's just another way to bounce. It's not really anything too significant. We're going to sing Friends and then bounce back our Maleficent and crash into their Maleficent. So in hindsight, they probably should not have quested with their Maleficent because if they have a Friends, that's a singer that's lost for it, right? So we do have card advantage. The opponent ends up dropping an Evasive Mini, but they, I guess, I don't know if they still have tempo. It's hard to tell right now because this Evasive Mini is a bit of a problem. And of course, I inked my Goat the turn after, or the turn before that they played the Evasive Mini, because it would have been really nice to keep it for right now, where I could just drop the Crab and then use my Mini Mouse to take out their Mini Mouse. But they end up dropping a Tremaine on turn 6, which is really strong. And they have a lot of questing pressure on board that I will struggle to deal with. So I just opt to draw some cards since the game is still fairly even and fairly low on the lore count. I can technically survive for a little while, and the Ursula might be able to claw back a lore or two in order to help make up for the lost advantage that I have here. So the opponent pulls off more Ruby Amethyst shenanigans and ends up with 11 lore, which is pretty strong. 2 cards in hand though. We're going to end up inking the Maui again, and then just be preparing to wipe the whole board and drawing a card off Rabbit. We pass turn, and I'm feeling pretty confident because I have way more cards than my opponent, but again, because I had to use those Be Prepareds, I'm behind on tempo. So on turn 7, I debate dropping the Ursula. I do end up dropping it and drawing a card. We ink the Goat here because I think at this point Goat isn't my win condition, where it might be for the opponent since they have way less cards than us and they might look to just get as much lore as possible and close things out with Goat. But they do have the Lady Tremaine, which is really strong in stopping the Ursula. I was planning to sing the Be Prepared with that Ursula next turn so that I can regain tempo and play after I Be Prepared and wipe the board. But the opponent's Lady Tremaine mops things up for them, but they are only on 2 cards. They top deck a Friends and they ink, and then they activate Spellbook. And I was like, okay, this card in the mirror match is what wins the mirror usually. It's not over though. We do have a solid chance because you know, Spellbook is slow. I mean, at this point in the game when we're at like 9, 10, 11 ink, you should always have extra mana to use on it. Whereas early game, it's not really that great since it costs 1 and it really slows you down. But the opponent wipes our whole board with a Be Prepared, and what looked really good for us now looks terrible because the opponent was holding their own Maleficent Dragon, and I was like, oh, I just threw this match. Perfect. They ink the Mini Mouse so that they could activate the Spellbook and then pass over to me. I'm on a 4-turn clock, but I do top deck the Pinocchio, which is super strong here because I can tap down the opponent's Maleficent and then bounce the Pinocchio back to hand with the Mim Fox, and then now we can hard cast the Teeth and Ambition, in order to deal damage to the Maleficent Dragon and then rush it down with the Mim Fox. The opponent top decks something and just ends up using the Spellbook and passing. I'm gonna end up dropping both of my characters here because I kind of figured that on a 3-turn clock I have to put as much pressure on board as possible. The opponent must have been drawing into like Mim cards or something because if they play them they get banished. So they're kind of bricked up, and just like that there's nothing that they can do because the Ursula clawing back the lore was actually relevant. They're only able to go to 19 and then they end up scooping it up.